Hey guys, it's Sam. Welcome to 2024. It still feels like it's January of 2023 to me. I don't know where 2023 went, and I'm going to continue to feel that way. But as much as I want to get into my end of the year wrap-up-y stuff, I did a few things in Vlogmas if you missed those. But still have my favorites of the year to talk about, my reading goal wrap-up, all of that. As much as I want to do that, and I will be filming that today, first, what you guys need to see first is my December wrap-up. Wrapping up 2023 with a normal wrap-up. I will say December was my biggest reading year. I read 10 books when I've been averaging 6 to 7 for most of the year, and I enjoyed all of them. So let's get into it. First, drum roll please. I started the Live Ship Trader series, even though I told myself in 2023 I was gonna read the whole series, didn't do that. These books are kind of intimidating because they are so large. But started it in 2023 with Ship of Magic. This is the first book in the Live Ship Trader series, which is the second trilogy within the overarching Realm of the Elderlings series. This takes place in a different part of the world and following different characters than we follow in the first trilogy. And it takes place in this seaside area, following multiple different characters. One who is essentially a pirate who's trying to be a pirate king. He's one of the villains that we follow. A more powerful family within one of these towns. We follow multiple characters from that family who are live ship traders. So having a live ship basically means that you have a ship that's built with wizard wood, and after 3 captains die on board, the ship becomes sentient. So we're following multiple characters from that family. One is a younger boy who wanted to be a monk or priest essentially, and then gets pulled back into the family drama because of reasons. So he ends up on this ship. We follow his aunt, another young woman who thought she was going to get this ship, but again, because of political reasons and family dynamics, that did not happen. I feel like I'm missing a POV. There's a couple other random POVs, but we're basically following all of the dynamics. We also get a POV of one of the ships sometimes. So yeah, we get a lot of different POVs in this, and it's Robin Hobb, so it's fantastic. Her books are heavy, so there are triggers in here. There's mentions of rape, there is a lot of talk of slavery and witnessing slavery, child abuse, lots of on-page child abuse, and some gore. It's it's a little graphic. And Robin Hobb's books are slower in pace. It's hard to even say slow. She does in-depth character studies. So while you have a lot of magic stuff happening, there are lots of in-depth character study things going on as well, and so many characters, and characters that even one of my favorite POVs in here, not because I like the character, but because I find what's going on with him very intriguing, is that villain character. Now there's another character who's, I forgot her even because she's annoying. There's another character who's a young woman who's very annoying and spoiled and bratty that I don't like, but it's also good to see what's going on because she messes things up. All of the stuff is very compelling. So yes, very happy to finally be in this world. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. Then I read A Strange and Stubborn Endurance by Foz Meadows. This is a Achillean fantasy romance, and it's essentially a arranged political marriage between 2 kingdoms for reasons. So essentially, Velicin, who's one of the main characters, is arranged to be married to a princess from another kingdom. He's gay, but his country is incredibly homophobic, and it's a disgrace. But something ends up happening where he's essentially, everyone finds out that he is gay, and that neighboring country doesn't have a problem with queer people and is oh, well, we'll just marry you off to the brother then. And so that ends up happening. So it's an arranged marriage romance plot, but there are some heavier themes in here. And actually what's nice about this book is one of the first pages has a note from the author as far as so yeah, it just says, A Strange and Stubborn Endurance contains on-page depictions of rape, suicidal ideation, and self-harm. While the narrative arc is one of healing, readers should nonetheless be aware of this content in order to engage with it on their own terms. Very nice. So yes, like that said, there is on-page rape at the very beginning of the story. So Velicin's main thing is kind of healing through that, and this relationship being very healing for that, and healing from a very homophobic society because the new place that he is living is so openly queer and fine with everything. And there's not only queer people, but there's trans characters and things, and the way that they use sort of magic for transition and just all of that. It's a very almost queer utopian society in a lot of ways that he goes into from being in this homophobic society. So I listened to this on audiobook and ended up really enjoying it. There is a second book to this because also there's this sort of political plot thing happening as well. Oh, also trigger warning for death of animals in here as well. But I'm not going to continue, not because I didn't enjoy this, just because this was fine. I don't need any more of these 2 characters doing like mystery stuff, this was fine. So you can definitely read this as a standalone, but just know that there is like a second, there's technically a duology. But I'm not really considering this like an unfinished series. I got what I needed from this book. And there's no like loose ends at the end of this one. 4 out of 5 stars, if I didn't say that already. And I read The Last Watch by J.S. Dews. This is a adult science fiction story. It's going to be a trilogy. The second book is already out. This follows characters that are on the edge of the universe. So it's in the future, sort of space opera-y. And there's different sort of ships and stations at the edge of the universe where previous villains, I think they're aliens of some kind, but they previously came from this edge of the universe, and so like they are sort of, again, the last watch. Like they're there at the divide to make sure that they alert everyone if something comes through or whatever. So we're following 2 characters. One is like the commander of that area, who is essentially like a disgraced, very important military figure, but you don't know what exactly happened. And then the other character is an estranged prince, but he doesn't act like, it's not Prince in the same way that we think of it, because again, it's this like sci-fi future thing, who's just essentially like really, really smart, almost like a scientist character. And so we follow their POVs. Something starts happening to the divide that is causing almost like universe collapse, and they're having to figure out what's going on, and like all of the like political machinations things with that too. So this feels like Mass Effect a little bit. You know, I compare everything that's sci-fi to Mass Effect. Post the trilogy, if some of those big characters that we had in that book were sent out to the fringes and then shit starts happening. Like, those are sort of the vibes. So again, if you like Mass Effect, you'll probably like this. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, maybe 4.5. It's very action-y. There are some character things, but I would say it's very like boom, boom, boom. There's stuff going on, like constantly. So if you like more action-packed stuff, this is it. Then I read another sci-fi. I read a lot of sci-fi at the end of the year. I mean, not a lot, but like enough. Some Desperate Glory by Emily Tesh. This was so interesting. I did not know what I was getting into when I started this, but I heard a lot of people like it, and I totally see why. This is taking place in a future where aliens wiped out Earth. Earth is no more. And so humans are sort of scattered around the universe, and humans, the main character that we follow, some humans are on this like Gaian space station that is heavily militarized, wants to get revenge for Earth being destroyed, blah, 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 blah. Incredibly xenophobic, very structured, and so we follow a character who is very enmeshed in all of that, and she's about to be assigned to whatever, like, squad, and she is one of the best soldiers on this space station. Like, she is above and beyond. But mysteriously, she gets assigned to the, like, nursery wing, which is just for you to make babies, essentially, and her brother ends up getting, she has a twin, her brother ends up getting assigned to, like a suicide mission kind of thing. And she's like, what is going on? And so she ends up teaming up with a friend of her brother's and an alien who ended up being like at the space station under arrest to like go off planet and figure out what the heck is going on. That sounds like such a simple plot, but let me just say that there's like time stuff, and if the what is it called? Edge of Tomorrow? If you like some of that like time jump, changing timelines, parallel universe stuff, that's what happens here. There are some heavy themes here though, because like I mentioned, like a lot of just like xenophobia and stuff. There's trigger warnings for suicide, rape off page, death of family, torture, and a lot of sexism. But this is something that like I never knew quite what to expect. Very interesting. This is self-contained. It is a standalone, and the exploration of, again, like unpacking xenophobia, someone getting to see what alternate timeline sort of would have looked like if certain things changed, the butterfly effect of certain things. Very cool. I really liked it. I give this 4.5 out of 5 stars. Something kept it from quite being 5 stars, although in my feelings it might end up moving up to a 5 over time. There was just like something that didn't quite sit perfectly for me, but otherwise I really enjoyed this. And yeah, the things that it explores and anything with like sort of alternate timelines, I really enjoy. Then I read Seasonal Fears by Shauna McGuire. This was a huge surprise to me, another surprise. Like I had a lot of surprises this month because I put this off for a long time. I have not read Middle Game, which is the first book in this sort of companion series. You don't have to read them in order, but I hadn't read Middle Game. A lot of people that read Middle Game said they liked that more than this, so I was like, maybe this just isn't as good, whatever. This is following 2 characters who essentially become, or have to compete to become, the personifications of seasons, of summer and winter. They don't know that they are those potential, like there's a bunch of people who have like this seed of those seasons in them, and they have to, like when the people who are currently the seasons die, they have to sort of compete to become the seasons. This is not a competition book, though. There's like a little segment of it that has that in it. It is more so like them understanding the machinations of how this all works, and the fact that there's like usually, I mean, at least in this, there are alchemists who made that be possible, like who made people become constructs. So this is less, it's character study-ish, and there is something that kept me from enjoying this a ton, although I still found it interesting, was like almost the entire book is just like info dumping by other characters to the characters explaining what's going on. Like, but it's interesting what's going on. Like all of the, again, weird political machination-y type behind the scenes stuff, how alchemy works, how they're constructs, all of that. I ended up having a really good time with this. I listened to this on audiobook and it was a really good time. But again, what kept it from being a 5-star is a little bit of distance from the characters and the fact that like most of it is just other people telling them what's going on. And then going to different locations. But it still ended up being like interesting and fun. So now I kind of want to read Middle Game, and then the last book in this series, I think it's Tidal Creatures, is coming out. The personification of social constructs, things like seasons and time and whatever, that's interesting to me. So I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. Intriguing, but don't love the way it was written necessarily. Really like the audiobook. I don't know. This one surprised me. Then I read A Taste of Golden Iron by Alexandra Rowland. This is another Achillean sort of political romantic fantasy romance, whatever you want to call it. The romance is the main plot of this. But this follows Cadeau, who is a prince, and he wants nothing to do with like ruling or anything, but ends up getting caught in this like political machinations thing. There's a lot of political machinations happening this month. And because of that, he ends up getting assigned a more strict guard, Evimer, who just like graduated top of his class. And they end up slowly forming a romance. Now, I love a Royal and the Guard romance, number 1. Number 2, the nice thing about this is while there is a like power dynamic thing in theory, the guards are not, he's not really a guard. Like specifically, they don't call them guards in this world because their guards are almost like equals to them or very nearly equals to them because they are so highly esteemed. There's like a reciprocity to the relationship, and the level of skill and knowledge and stuff and just like power that the guards also hold is so much higher than what you would have in a typical like guard system. So we get to see them kind of exploring what's going on political machinations wise, and like basically people are trying to, you know, seed unrest within the like kingdom. Well, it's really like a queendom empire thing. His sister is like the crown royal. Also, Cadeau has anxiety, like potentially OCD, like very severe anxiety. It's never called anxiety on the page, but from a fantasy setting, it's anxiety that I have not seen some like this severe of anxiety depicted in a fantasy book. So if you're looking for some more mental health rep, this is great too. As I mentioned, I love a Royal and the Guard kind of romance. I really enjoyed this. I split this between audiobook and physical copy, reading it at the end of this month. This is a little bit less heavy than A Strange Separate Endurance, but I think if you've read either one of these, you would like the other. Like I just happened to read both of these in the same month, even though there's similar theming here. This one feels less heavy. There is really like not a homophobic society. Like again, everyone is cool. There's like different genders and stuff, and like it's a non-issue. So it's really just about their romance being like a normal romance, and then all this like political stuff kind of happening on the side. Also, the magic in this is that they can the crown princes and stuff, and some different people in the society can touch taste metals. And their whole like society is formed around the fact that like this group of people like can tell you the actual value of like a coin, and like counterfeiting isn't really a thing and whatever, which was an interesting way to do like a political fantasy. So anyway, I really enjoyed this. Another 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read a couple little short books. So first was this book, The Llewellyn's Book of Yule. You guys know that I celebrate witchy pagan holidays, and this publisher publishes little books that are guides to like all of the Wheel of the Year holidays throughout the year. So I did this for Yule, and I quite enjoyed it. I give this like 4 or 5 stars, honestly. It was very cute. If you're into witchy stuff and you want to celebrate more of the holidays, this is a nice amalgamation of a lot of like historical stuff about it. So very fun. Then I read A Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers. This is so cute. This is so cute. So this is the second book in the Monk and the Robot series. So far, this is all that's going to be published, but she said that she could always return to this world in the future if she has more stories for them. But this is following a teen monk who is essentially a therapist who ends up having a crisis, like a almost quarter life crisis in the first book, and ends up going off into the forest. And years ago, robots just like left and went off into the woods, and like no one has seen them. So then a robot comes and approaches them and is like, what do you guys need? This is them going around together to different places, different like human villages, because this is like a solar punk future, a very like small community kind of based, and trying to see like what people need. It's very sweet, very simple, very cozy. I will say that there's a scene in here that made me cry over a fish. So like, I teared up in this tiny little book. It's nothing groundbreaking. I know some people think that Becky Chambers books are like too sickly sweet. I don't think, for me, they aren't. I don't know. And I'm not like a sickly sweet person. They hit like kind of just right. There is a certain simplicity to this, but like it's so pure and so sweet. So if you just want a break and want to imagine a really nice future, these are great. Gave us like 4 or 4.25 stars. Then I finally read Kaikeyi by Vaishnavi Patel. I've been wanting to read this like all year. This follows Kaikeyi, who's one of the kind of like villains antagonists within the Ramayana, which is a Indian epic historical myth, kind of like what the Iliad is to Western like Greek mythology, the Ramayana is to like Indian culture, is like my understanding. I know nothing of the Ramayana. I was not familiar with it at all. So I went into this very just like not having any expectations. The author does have a huge author note on like at the beginning of like, here's the different translations that I've pulled from, and like, you know, all these myths sort of have different translations or different ways of thinking about things and whatever. And so she kind of pulls some things in, creates new things, whatever. So this is essentially in the same vein as like a Madeline Miller Circe kind of thing, but for this character. And I loved it because I love that kind of book. This hit in the same ways for me as like Circe and things do, especially when you have this character who's seen as villainous, and you get their POV, you see what she has to go through. Like, this is a character who is fighting a lot of like misogyny and things, and she even talks about in the story like ways in which things were twisted within like the stories about her and all of that. So I really enjoyed this. I really liked her as a character. I really liked a lot of the other side characters, the ways in which these kinds of stories twist who the original heroes were, and just again give a different POV. I just really love that kind of thing. And this author's coming out with another story this year, and I'm forgetting what it is following, like what myth it's following, but I'll be following her writing now because it's like, to me, it's her and Genevieve Gornichek and Madeline Miller. Those are the ones that I follow for my myth retellings because they do a good job and they do what I would like to see, which is like really fleshing out a character that we don't know a lot about, usually a woman. I love it. I gave this one 4.5. Probably, but this could bump up to a 5, honestly. There were just some things about this that didn't quite make it a 5 because there were some things about the villains that were a little bit too one note for me, especially when this character was like so fleshed out. But otherwise, amazing. And finally, I read Lost in the Moment and Found by Shauna McGuire, which is like, what, the 8th or something book in the Wayward Children series. This does have triggers for like grooming of children and like, you know, sort of molestation and stuff, which is not on page but is implied. So she has a little note in the beginning about that as well, if you want to learn more about that. But as you guys probably know, these are all books that are following kids who go through portals to different worlds. And this character, her name is Ansi, she pops up in the previous book that follows some of the like characters who are already in the school, but this is like her story of her door. And she goes to the place for lost things. And this felt like a rejuvenation of the series a little bit to me. The series has been lacking a little bit to me in the last couple of books. It's just been kind of like bland. The last 2 or 3, I think, have been just like a little shaky to me, just kind of like 3 stars. This brought it back up to where it was, and it feels sort of like, again, breath of fresh air, reboot to the series in a lot of ways, because we find like the place that she goes to, the place for lost things, is a nexus that also has doors open up to all of the worlds, essentially, which I think is going to add an interesting note to things. And it seems like the next book in the series following this one is also going to be following like her trying to find this specific door, and that's going to open things up for a lot of the other characters as well. So yeah, I'm intrigued. But I ended up really enjoying this, and this whole idea of like a place where lost things go, and then some of the like rules around this specific place was also really cool. So I gave this like 4.25 or 4.5 stars. Glad that this series is hitting the way that it used to again. I hope that we keep on this upward trajectory for this. All right, so that is it for all the books I read in December. Comment below, let me know how your December reading went. And like I said, I will be putting out videos for all of my end of the year wrap-up stuff very soon. So thank you all for watching. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.